All right. Episode 1.
Episode 1. Congratulations.
Thank you. We freaking did it.
Yeah, the studio looks awesome.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
It's building the studio was such a tricky thing because it was I know better than anybody that I'm not the best interior designer of all time.
I think it turned out great.
But this was a big combination of Pinterest, a little bit of outside opinions for sure. We had to do a lot of consulting calls for this one. But yeah, I think it all came together pretty well.
I thought I heard out in the hall something about your mom was helping with it a little bit.
Yeah, so my sweet mother, she when I picked out the area rug for my apartment like 3 or 4 months ago, I was like, it took me like 35-40 minutes just hanging out in like the rug section of At Home. And I was going for this one. I was like, oh, it's going to be super easy. It'll be quick. It's not even going to be in the shot, so it won't matter that much. Well, 30 minutes into me being at home trying to find my next area rug, I hit my mom up and I was like FaceTiming her. I'm like, okay, well, what do you think about this one? Because I'm trying to bring out these colors, and this one seems like it's too extra. So originally I had told her that the rug that's in here now, I was like, I kind of like that one. It's like, it's good vibe, whatever. She talked me out of it. She had some good points at the time. And then we got one that was like just looked terrible in here. And I was expecting this big moment where I like rolled out the area rug and I was like, aha,
It all
it's
came
complete.
together. Yeah.
I rolled it out and I was just like, shit.
Damn it, Mom.
So I took it back. I got this one and I sent my mom another FaceTime call and she answers it and she was like, wow, that looks good. Wait, is that the one that originally you told me? Yes, it sure was, Mom.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm excited about doing it, man. I remember that we talked a little bit last year when I was going through the whole like, I wanted to launch the solo podcast. I wanted to get real about it, and I remember we had a talk, and you're like, "Well, just do it. Like, do whatever it is that it takes." And this studio is one of the things where I was just like, you can't really do the damn thing without having a space that you can like do good lighting and have good sound and all that stuff. So, I went 3 years in my business without ever having an office space or anything like that. And now it's just like everything's come together just like that. So
I also think it's kind of a testament to that. Just start.
Yeah.
Just go. Like, you didn't have all this stuff when you started and you could have asked everybody, you could have done all these different things, but you just got to start. And then you end up with this and you wouldn't have known exactly what you wanted without doing those anyway. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah. And honestly, I've got to give a huge shout to Clay and everybody who's helped us with the Owner's Journal, because that really was our biggest, like, just start, just get it going kind of thing. And I definitely wouldn't have launched the solo podcast without having 38 episodes under our belt of figuring out like the camera's dying and like we used to have so many interruptions of people coming by and like cleaning windows or like people would drive by and their Bluetooth would connect to the stereo and music would start blasting. So it was really nice going into this first episode that like, don't want to freaking knock on wood real quick. Right. I don't think that a camera will die. I don't think that this light will fall on us.
You've done your part. You've done everything you can. Yeah.
But I do think that it's hard to have a first episode ever where everything goes right. So inevitably, like one of us probably spill a drink or something like that, but it'll be a lot less than the other times. But tell me about, so for everybody who isn't us, I guess. Yeah. Probably not everybody knows that we recorded this episode a first time. Yep. Episode 0, which may never come out.
Maybe in a blooper reel.
Talk to me a little bit about how things have changed since then, because I think that was probably 3 or 4 months ago. Yeah.
Well, some big changes. Most things are pretty much the same. Business is still going well, all that stuff. Big change in my life. I got engaged last week.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's go.
Yeah, super excited about that. Kelly, my girlfriend, we've been together for almost 5 years. We might have to edit that part later, Rowan. I think it's been about 5 years. I finally, and God bless her for having the patience to stick with me this long. I've known I wanted to be with her forever, but just having been married before and having a divorce and everything like that took me a little while to wrap my head around getting married again, and I just appreciate all the patience that she had with me through all that, and yeah, so I tried. I got the ring back in December, and I was gonna propose to her on Christmas Eve, and then that didn't work out because everything, like, she was sick, I was sick, so then I was gonna do it on New Year's, and we got up to the cabin late, and we were cleaning and this and that, so it didn't work. Like, I had all these big moments planned, and then finally, like last week on Sunday, like I'm packing this ring around in my pocket all the time, like trying to come up with this, grand gesture. And then finally, we just had a really cool weekend. Like, and one of the things she had said is she didn't care how it happened as long as we were both in a really good place when it happened. And it was just a fun weekend. I'd gotten back from Florida on Friday. We spent, Friday evening together, just her and I. The boys were with their mom. Saturday we hung out together, did some, just had a good time, just bouncing around town, doing whatever. Saturday night, watched movies and whatnot. And Sunday we were just chilling in the house, and finally got up the guts to do it. And she said yes, and that's legally binding, so she has to now. So
heck yeah. I saw a sticky note or something like that she posted on her story. What's the story behind that?
Honestly, I don't particularly remember. I leave her little sticky notes all the time. Like, that's the thing. It's such a corny deal. Like, that's one of the things that made me know that, like, this is real and this is worth doing, because we do things like that. Like, I leave little sticky notes on the mirror, just love you, and she finds them and she cries and all that stuff. But it doesn't feel corny. Like, and I'm not doing it for any other reason that I want her to see that and be happy later. And it just, all those little corny things are real. So it's like, it's just a cool deal. I don't remember that particular note, but
okay.
I leave a lot of notes.
What are some of the things that you've learned over the last 5 years of being together, and then now being engaged? What are some of the things that you're excited to continue to grow together on?
Communication is huge. And we've got a great relationship, I think. And we do communicate very well. We've gotten to the point where when either one of us sees something, I think a lot of times you sweep things under the rug and decide not to address them until the point, until it gets to a boiling point. And then there's hurt feelings, there's anger, and then it's hard to discuss those things. And I think we're really good at addressing those things early on. Like, hey, can we sit down and talk about this, and talk about it in a calm way? And both of us want it to work. Like, we're both, it's not me against her. It's not her against me. It's us against whatever that, like, I know that's like a Facebook or Instagram meme, but it's a real thing for us. Like, it's not us against each other. It's us against whatever that obstacle is. And it's just, it's great. We actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but we started doing, couples counseling, not because we're not in a great place, because we are in such a great place. And we're like, that'd be kind of fun to go and, like, there's part of me that wants to go in there and have the counselor be like, no, you guys nailed it. A+, you can move on. But it's like, it's so good now. Like, what can we learn there that can make it even better? So it's a really fun, I think. And I think I would suggest that to anybody. We've only had 2 sessions, and it's really cool. And it ignites some really cool conversations afterwards. So yeah, I'd recommend that to anybody.
Okay. What are some of the things that essentially made you open to doing that in the first place, and being willing to, obviously, we both get a chance to interact with Summer quite a bit.
Sure.
But what were some of the things that allowed you to pull the trigger on that and be like, yeah, no, I think that this is a good thing? Because sometimes it's hard to course correct when it doesn't feel like anything's necessarily going wrong, but just like go for that top end.
Yeah. I did, in my first marriage, I did a lot of things wrong. I was young, arrogant. I didn't do things well. I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't a good listener. I wasn't a good communicator. If there was a problem, it wasn't my fault. It was somebody else's fault. And so I think being older and having had that experience and stuff, and not having the same ego and stuff, like, this relationship is more important than my ego. Like, just being like, yeah, if that's something that, Kelly brought it up one time. Hey, would you be interested in doing this? Yeah, if you think it'll help us. It's an hour out of my day. Let's give it a rip. If it doesn't work, oh well.
Yeah. That's interesting, because some of the people that have the most, I guess, aspirational relationships that I've seen, where it's people who I would be like, I'd love to take you out to coffee specifically, or both of you guys, and figure out, like, how do you make this work as well as you do? It's a very common theme that they're like, yeah, go to couples counseling or marriage counseling or whatever that is. Yeah. And I find that to be interesting, because I started going to therapy in November last year, so 3-4 months. And I, for the longest time, had this, I kind of like bought into the stigma around it, right? Where I was like, yeah, I kind of think that I don't need to sit down and tell somebody all my problems because I'm already dealing with the problems. Why would we sit down and just sit
man,
there?
I'll figure it out.
Yeah. And definitely operated that way for a long time and shoved a lot of stuff in the back of the closet or whatever. But it's so interesting because it's something now that I didn't realize how positive looking it could be.
Sure.
And maybe that's just how awesome Summer is. Who knows?
She is awesome.
But shout out to Summer. But it's so funny because I get excited. Like Tuesday night, I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I get to go to see Summer tomorrow. Like when I'm driving there, I'm excited about it. And it's not at all what I imagined that my feelings around therapy would be.
Right.
It's just kind of, I don't know.
It's interesting. The first time I met Summer, I was walking through Granite Fitness in the morning, and I looked over and I saw her, and I recognized her from Drew McManus's photos and stuff. And so I walked over. I'm like, "Are you Summer?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I'm Jason Tounsley." She was like, "I would like to talk to you." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "I want to have coffee with you." And I'm like, "Okay." So we started talking and whatnot. And she actually, I don't want to say she tricked me into it, but she calls me up one day and she's like, "Hey, I'm learning this new technique and I need to get so many hours in before I can actually do it professionally. And I need to do it with some guys. Would you be willing to come in and I could just kind of practice it on you?" I'm like, "Sure, why not? Nice chick. I can be helpful. Sure, I'll go up and do it." Yeah, that's how they get you. So we do like 2 or 3 sessions. She's like, "Do you want to continue?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And it's not anything, like you said, it's way different than I thought it was. It's nothing, it's not like, "Oh, you're this way because of your childhood." Or it makes me ask questions from a different perspective. Like I'm always trying to work on myself, like trying to be better, a better dad, a better partner, a better whatever it is. And sometimes you just, no matter how hard you work on that, no matter what you read, you get stuck in a loop and you can't figure that out. And it's just nice to have somebody else every once in a while, an impartial party that has no dog in the fight, just say, "Hey, have you looked at it from this perspective?" "Oh, that's a good, and then, yeah, I'll think about it." And you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it makes sense now." So, yeah, it's cool.
Do you, has it ever crossed your mind, thinking about like different situations in your life or different phases or something like that might have gone differently or that you might have been able to deal with better if you would have had somebody like Summer, like, going to therapy during some of those times?
I don't think it would have worked. I don't think I think that would have worked in the last 10 years. Before that, I think my ego would have got it's not this is what I do and everybody else can, figure their stuff out around me.
When the student's ready, the teacher will appear.
Exactly. Yeah. It's I think within the last, since I was probably 40-ish, maybe since then it would have worked, but before that, no.
Interesting. How having kids and, thinking about raising them and doing all that kind of stuff, has any of the work that you've done now changed your opinion or inspired you to get them involved with anything like that?
Yeah, it has. Owen, my oldest boy, he's 20. He's been in a relationship for 4 years, almost 5 years with the same girl. They've, mentioned possibly getting married and stuff. And I know he puts a lot of pressure on himself, to be a leader, to be responsible for things. He's a very responsible person. And I think he puts so much pressure on himself sometimes that it would be nice for him to have somebody. And I don't think I'm helpful with that. I'm his dad. I'm like, "Oh yeah, you need to take care of this. You need to take care of that," kind of without thinking about all the way through, without giving him the tools to cope with those things. So having somebody else to come in and be like, "Okay, if that's what you need to get done, if those are your responsibilities, if that weight is going to be put on you, here's the tools you need to cope with that." And I'm not the person to do that. I'm still learning, but it would be good to have somebody teach him those things for sure.
Yeah. It's funny, all of the lessons that you end up learning. Sometimes you get the lesson in a good way, but the way that you got it isn't always great.
Right, for sure.
And it's so funny because after talking to a ton of people who are creative and business owners and who have objective outward success, so many of them have backstories where they've got a little bit of color in their past.
Sure.
And not that there's anything wrong with that, but most of them, even with all of their failures, all of their mistakes, when you ask them, "What would you have done differently?" They're like, "Nothing.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have started going to therapy earlier. I wouldn't have done anything different because it put me in the place that I'm in now." I'm curious if there's a version or a level of that with how you look at things now.
Yeah, I mean, I wish if anything, I wouldn't change anything. I think what I would change is to learn how to take my ego out of a lot of those decisions in the beginning, and then everything else would have fixed itself. Like, I think that's the thing. I think as a young man, you come out and, you find out, okay, I get to make my own decisions now. And I think there's so many decisions that are so easy to make, and you're getting them all right, and you keep getting them right. And then you think you're getting them right. And then later on down the road, you find out how it affected other people. And maybe you weren't getting them all right. Well, by the time you figure that out, you're 30 years old, and now you're going, wait a minute, maybe I'm not always right. So I think if you could, the only way that works is if you can put your ego aside and not try to be right, not to try to be in charge, but really to do the right thing for it, not for everybody, but the best version of the right thing you can come up with.
For sure. I'm so tempted to go all the way into stoicism right now, because I know a lot of the ego stuff comes out of that. I want to give people a little bit of context though, so they, because I obviously, your friend, confident, kicked the shit out of me in conditioning and jujitsu and all the other stuff. But I want to give people a little bit of context before we go too far into the stoicism stuff. One of my favorite stories about your childhood and the way that you came up was your guys' buy a business road tour.
Yeah.
Is that a good place to start for kind of giving people a little bit of background on yourself?
I mean, that seems like lifetimes ago. Yeah, we can start there.
All right, let's
start wherever. You want them to hear the story, or you want to tell them the story?
So,
when I was probably 14, just got done with 8th grade, going into the 9th grade, my dad lost his job. He managed a timber export corporation in Washington State, and the logging industry got shut down. They put the spotted owl on the endangered species list, effectively closing down the entire logging industry in the Pacific Northwest. And so he, day one, he's making good money, benefits, company truck, we're living in a great house, everything. Next day, doesn't have a job. And I think, I didn't know it at the time, but I think looking back, this is the most stoic thing ever. He didn't cry. He didn't whine. He didn't go and fight or yell, he's like, okay, well, I've always wanted to live in Montana. We're loading up our shit and we're going to Montana. And we literally sold the house. He drug a U-Haul over to Bozeman and put some furniture and things they wanted to keep in a storage unit in Bozeman. And then myself, my little brother, my mom and my dad jumped in a pickup, pulling a 27-foot travel trailer, and we headed for Montana. And we'd pull up to a campground and get everything unloaded. And so the first place we stopped was in Bozeman. There was a little campground in Four Corners. And during the day, my parents would go look at businesses that they would potentially buy. And me and my brother would hang out on the river. We'd learn to fly fish. That's literally where I learned to fly fish. My parents were gone all day. They handed us each a fly rod. Go get them, Tiger. And that's how I learned to fly fish. And we cruised around. We looked at, we looked at an ice cream shop in Townsend, Montana. We looked at a Bob Ward's in Hamilton. We looked at a gas station in Red Lodge. and a coin-op laundry in Cody. We literally went all over this area looking for something. They finally decided on a laundromat dry cleaners in Bozeman. And so that's where we set up shop. That was it.
Did you have, at that point, any interest in the kinds of different businesses that your dad was looking at, or do you have any interest in how whatever business you chose might affect your guys' lives?
No, I was 14, 15. I was super excited about being in Montana. Hunting and fishing's huge for myself, my brother, my whole family. That was our thing. I was so excited to be in Montana. Bummed. I'm going into 9th grade and I just lost all my friends, and I'm going into a new school in a new city. There was so much of that I was, it was probably taking up space in my brain. And just I'm oh, we get to hunt here. And we get, we'd walk into a, back then it wasn't Sportsman's Warehouse or Cabela's. It was, the Powderhorn Sporting Goods, back when the whole place was lined with taxidermy from the 1930s. And I just, I would literally walk from my parents' laundromat, which was clear up by campus, walk clear downtown just to wander around Powderhorn Sports and look at all these mounts and stuff and just like enamored by all of it, So no, the business part of it, I was pretty like, I had no idea.
Checked out. Yeah.
I didn't care.
Okay. What was your, I guess like your mental space, like, having to leave all of your friends and then restart?
Man, I can remember like my mom didn't think I was so the last day of school I went to hang out with a friend after school, and then the next day we were leaving, so I went to hang out with this friend, and I was supposed to get on the city bus and go up to I think I was supposed to go up to where my mom worked, and then she'd give me a ride home. And when I got off the bus at her work, she was like, "Oh wow, you actually came home." Like, she didn't think I was going to show up. She thought I was, I did not want to leave. I had a whole bunch of really good friends that I'd grown up with. We grew up in the same neighborhood. I lived in the same neighborhood my whole life. 15 years old. It's the only thing I knew, and I didn't want to leave, especially going into high school. That's a tough time for a kid, So yeah, I wasn't a real team player on that one.
Interesting. Did having a summer of fly fishing and screwing around with your brothers and all that, did that change things a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, once we got here and we were having fun. On 15th birthday, I got a gun and we went out. We were going out shooting guns and shooting gophers like we'd never shot gophers before or anything like that. And we're going out and burning bricks at 22 shells and shooting gophers. We'd go over in the morning, fish for a couple hours, fly fish for a couple hours on the Madison, go shoot gophers all day long, then come back, stop, fly fish for a couple more hours before it got dark, then came home. Like, yeah, it was the best. It was the best.
That sentence just sold 3 more houses in Montana.
Well, and that was when you went and you fished we'd go and there's a place, we called it the shit houses to Bear Trap, but there were some outhouses at one end, and at the top is Bear Trap Canyon. And at that time, you would go over there in the middle of the summer and you'd see 2 or 3 other fly fishermen. Oh. Right now, you go over there and you couldn't fly fish it because there's so many tubers coming down it in the summertime. It's ridiculous.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting, man. What about your first day of school? And I'm getting to this because I went. So you're going into 9th grade when
going into 9th grade.
Okay, so I switched going into 10th grade. Okay. But that 10th grade is when high school started for us. Oh, sure. So I'm really curious for you, like first day walking into school and all of that. What are you thinking?
Man, I just wanted to make some friends, make a friend. Like I was super insecure, just wanted some friend to like cling on to. And Bozeman was very cliquey. Like there was very defined groups of jocks and stoners and whatever they were, but it was very distinct groups, and I just wanted to make a couple friends. So I wasn't, just to blend in. So I wasn't like this, wounded duck out there waiting to be picked off or something.
Spoken like a true hunter.
Right, exactly. Right.
Yeah, I felt a similar thing too. I transferred high schools going into my sophomore year. For football, because I knew that I wanted to play college football.
Sure.
I knew that the writing on the wall was for me to graduate without student loan debt, that football was kind of going to be the thing that did it. And we went 2-7 my freshman year, and I was trying my darndest to get everybody on board with like doing a lot of training outside of like what we had to do and all this different stuff. And it was just like, it just wasn't going to happen. So I looked at, there were 2 high schools I was looking at going to. Boise had an open enrollment, so you could transfer schools if you wanted to. And I ended up choosing our crosstown rival, which was like the longest rivalry in Boise.
Oh, wow.
And it did not go over well at all. So I didn't physically move at all.
Yeah.
But just like you, I lived in the same neighborhood growing up the whole time. We lived in a neighborhood that was connected to 3 other neighborhoods where cars couldn't get there, but there were these little walking paths.
Oh.
So we had everybody that we wanted to hang out with. We were within bike riding distance of the school. So we were like, if you had a bike, you were good to go, man. You had everything you needed. And so, I grew up with those same kids from the time I was born until I was 15. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I told them I was going to transfer, it was 2 weeks before I left junior high. And so you're doing yearbooks and end of year celebrations and all that stuff. And I remember that I made the decision. I called my parents, told them about it, and I walked into my head coach's office after our last day of spring ball, and I was like, "Hey, I need to talk to you, whatever." And I'd been playing for the same like feeder, little league team, junior high team, the whole thing. So it was like writing on the wall was I was going to be the quarterback of this high school my sophomore year, and 3-year start of the whole thing. I walked in there and told him I was transferring, and he was like, I think you're making a huge mistake. Your friends are never going to want to talk to you again. This is a show of how poor your character is, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, man, I just think this is the right move for me. And I was like, we can agree to disagree, but thanks for everything, man. Like, you've been a huge help to me growing up. And I stuck my hand out to shake it and, say my goodbye. And he looked at it and he was like, I'm good. Get out of my office.
Oh, wow.
I was 15. And the next 2 weeks, when I was at school, my friends wouldn't talk to me. Same guys that I grew up with the whole time. Had just got done doing 2 weeks of spring ball with them.
Right.
In my yearbook, most of the like little entries and stuff were like, watch your knees.
Jeez.
Like, yeah, crazy to see you go, all this stuff. And they spray painted in my neighborhood, TP'd and egged my house, like the whole thing.
Wow.
And so seriously, every single person that I grew up with, I don't talk to any of them except for one dude. And him and I weren't even that close while we were in high school or while we were growing up. So what was interesting about that, though, was like it really did feel like a full clean start.
Sure.
It was just a trip because I was still in my hometown.
Right, yeah.
And those first couple of days, I remember just being like, dude, I don't know who I'm going to eat lunch with.
Right.
I don't know what my identity is. People don't know me. Like before, you could lean on, you were an outdoors guy, or you were good at sports, or you're good at fighting, or like whatever your thing was. But you're literally, nobody knows you or gives a shit about you day one. But I feel like I learned a lot from that. And I'm curious if, I know that I take a lot of things from that experience that maybe is subconscious still. But I'm curious if that moment for you felt like it gave you some tools, like as you continued past high school and even through high school.
That's funny. Actually, me and, I can't remember if it was me and Owen or me or Cooper were just talking about this. So freshman year was the first year that I'd ever been able to leave campus for lunch. And I have no friends. And I'm like, so like that was the, you dreaded time where I'm going to be walking to some restaurant by myself, going in by myself, sitting down by myself. And to a 15-year-old kid, that's literally like the most embarrassing thing ever. I don't have any friends.
Devastating. And
so I'm just going, and I'd go over to Hardee's, or I'd go over to Little Caesars, and I'd get my lunch, and I'd sit by myself and this and that. And then one day, like 2 or 3 guys that I didn't really, not really good friends with, but they're like, hey, you want to go to lunch with us? Sure, yeah. And I went to lunch with them. And they were just jacking around and throwing ketchup. I literally was walking back. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll eat lunch by myself from now on. And so I just I was like, no, I don't need other people. Like in that moment, I was like, I don't need other people. Like I was happier by myself. So like from then on, I went to lunch with other people. Sometimes after I'd been there for a while and made some real friends and stuff, I'd go to lunch with friends and actually usually not come back and go fishing instead or something. But yeah, like that was a moment that actually I remember it was Cooper the other night. We were at dinner and he looks over and he sees this old guy sitting there by himself eating dinner. And he's like, I feel sorry for that old guy. I'm like, why? He said, well, he's eating all by himself. I'm like, maybe he wants to. Maybe he's getting away from his family. Maybe his grandkids are driving him nuts. Maybe this is the hour where it's quiet and somebody brings him some food and he has his beer and that's his thing. Like you don't have, it was something that definitely, kind of got that in my head that like, you don't need somebody else. Just because everybody else needs to move in a pack doesn't mean you have to move in a pack.
Was it easier that that school was so cliquey and that it was so like well-defined, I guess, with the different social groups? Did that make it easier to be like, yeah, I'm just going to do my own thing? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I had going into like 10th grade, I had a good group of friends, 5 or 6 guys. And one of them, Jimmy, you've met him, and we're still friends 35 years later, and the other guys I'm still friends with, I just don't see him very often. Me and Jimmy still go to Florida all the time. He comes down and hangs out. We own a gym together actually. So, but yeah, I think it was really easy to, like, it was almost easier just to go do my own thing than it was to trying to break into one of those other groups. And I think in my sophomore year, that group of friends that I had made that were like my good core group of friends, we had 2 lunches. We had like first lunch and second lunch. They were all in second lunch. I'm in first lunch. So now I'm on my own at lunchtime all again. But I still got this good group of friends and stuff. But I'm still like, I think I had never thought about this really before until you just mentioned this. But like, yeah, that kind of, yeah, I don't need a pack. Like, it's good to have a group of friends, and it's good to have somebody to lean on, to share things with, to talk to people about. But like, you don't need somebody else. You know, you can move on your own.
What do you think about the value of long-term friendships? Because that's something that I don't know why it's come up for me in the last couple weeks a ton of times. And I had a buddy who was like, "Hey, bro, we've been friends 10 years."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Whoa, yeah." I mean, it's crazy. Like, stuff like that's starting to happen. And you know, one of my favorite quotes is that one of the only things that you can't get when you're old is a new old friend.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you can't have a 35-year friendship with somebody after that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the longest friendships that I feel like I'm building start after that, like, big transition for me. So I'm curious, like, having friends like Jimmy and having people who have been in your life and seen a ton of different phases. How do you view having people that have been in your life for that long?
So I think it can be really special. Like, I think it can be really special. I think it can be super toxic too. Like, I think there was a period where for probably 10 years where me and Jimmy would talk to each other once a year.
Dang.
Like, call him up, hey, and then no bad blood or nothing. He was living in Missoula. I was living in Billings. Call him up, hey, what have you been up to? Oh, hey, I had a kid. You know, like, oh, really? Yeah. Oh, you know. So we were able to, like, go and live our own lives and do our own thing. And we've come back. I mean, he still lives in Bozeman. I live here, but we've already got 4 fishing trips planned for this spring, and we'll do things together. And when we do see each other, it's like, there's no expectations on, like, if you get busy and you can't meet me somewhere, okay, we'll meet up later. And it's same for me. And then when we do meet up, like, the conversation literally starts from where it stopped last time. It just picks up and we talk like we haven't been apart for 20 seconds. I think when you get those friends that, and I think this happens a lot to people, like, right around your age, like, starting about where you're at, or you have these friends that were in high school, college, and now you're all going off to start living your own lives. And there's this certain expectation from some people that now, because we were friends, you owe me certain things. Like, there's like some expectation of friendship there where you have to meet certain requirements of that friendship. And I think that's when it becomes toxic. Like, when you get stuck, or people keep, like, I think of it like, you know, the crab in the pot pulling the other crab back into the pot. Like, you know, let people go live their life, do their thing. If it comes back around and you be friends again on the other side, great. If not, let them live.
Yeah. Know? So once you graduated college, got through some of the stuff that you did. Well, was it graduated high school? You didn't go
high school. I didn't go.
I was going to say. So once you graduated high school, you hung out in Bozeman for a little while, doing archery shops and stuff like that. When you made those transitions to going really hard into archery and then eventually starting your business, how did some of those dynamics change with the people that were around you as you kind of started stepping into, like, your passions and then eventually your business?
You know, so the archery thing, that's who my friends were. That's all I did. Like, that was our group of friends. That's what we did in high school. That's what we did. I mean, that was just hunting. That's all we did. So they kind of came along. And actually, one of my best friends at the time, he was as into it as I was. He worked in a shop in Bozeman. I worked in a shop here. You know, every chance we could get, we'd meet up somewhere to go hunting on the weekend and stuff. So, like, that friend group kind of stayed the same. But then at a certain point, you know, I think I was lucky in that we both kind of realized, like, you can make a living at it, but you're going to sacrifice a lot of things. There's a lot better ways to make a living than doing that. So he started an electrical apprenticeship. And then right after that, he's like, hey, have you looked into this apprenticeship thing? And I'm like, yeah, I've kind of, you know, I had one guy talk to me about it. He's like, you should look into it again. And so that's actually why I ended up getting into the apprenticeship. But then moving into my own business, I think at that point, part of those lessons, like we were talking about, like in high school, where, yeah, you can have a group of friends and you can do things with them, but you got to make your own moves. You got to do your own thing. I think I didn't ever see any huge impact from that. And I think that's why.
Interesting. Yeah. There's something that Chris Williamson a term that he coined that I really relate to called the lonely chapter. And being the age that I am right now, being 25, it's funny because I've got people on my staff who are 18. I've got friends who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And then a lot of my friends are like this weird range of like 18 to 35. So I've got everything from like just stepping into their career to having a couple kids and doing the whole thing. What I find interesting about it though is that regardless of what chapter people are or what chapter people are in, I keep hearing people talk about this lonely chapter over and over and over again. And the idea of it is that once you decide that you're going to do your next thing, whether it's, you know, chasing a business or a career change or start a family or whatever the thing is that's really pulling you, once you actually start to step into that, there's this weird phase called the lonely chapter where all of the people that you were around when you were doing the stuff that you're coming from, whether that's being in high school, hanging out at archery shops, whatever, you, for lack of a better term, outgrow them or you go on a different path as them. And you don't really have them as friends like they used to be anymore. You might run into them here and there. But you haven't gotten around the other thing or gotten good at the other thing long enough to start to be in those circles and be respected by those people and have those friends. And so there's this weird middle ground where you end up being in a spot where it's like, it's lonely. The only thing that you can focus on is getting better at the thing that you're doing, but you don't have the same support from all the people that you were around. And it's like, oh, well, he thinks he's better than us, or he thinks that, you know, he's doing his other thing or blah, blah, blah. And, I've definitely been there, but it's an interesting thing talking to other business owners who it seems like that tends to be a theme where it's just like, yeah, it was lonely for a little while. Yeah. Like it was a huge shift. So I'm curious, you know, having people who were kind of in your corner who have been for a long time, do you felt like you ever went through any of those phases as you kind of started to come into your own?
I feel I've always no, because I think I keep my circle so small, like that the people that really matter know what's going on and they're in my corner. They're like, oh, you got to get that done. Go get them, you know, like that. So I feel there is a loneliness in that, since I do have a small circle and there's in my brain a very real delineation between my good friends and what a lot of other people call friends, but really they're just acquaintances, people that you run into day to day. And they might be friends you can stop and talk to, but they're not like good friends.
Right.
The loneliness comes with like, so I don't know if you ever noticed, my Instagram page is nothing. I mean, I do lots of cool shit. Like I just went to Florida for a week and I'm bombing around in the flats by myself in this little boat and like catching fish. And like, I could have the coolest Instagram page ever. I'm always traveling all this. I don't put it out there because somebody's going to use that against me. One of my employees is going to be like, oh, I see Tounsley's in Florida again. Well, I can't even afford to take my kid to here and he's going to Florida again. Or, oh, I see, but you know, they don't see the fact that I've got 4 other businesses. You know, I've been very lucky in some of the investments I've made. Like they don't see all the, you know, the 5 years when it was me and Josh working 60 hours a week, every single week, you know, they don't see that. They just see that part of it. So it makes it so it's not even worthwhile. So it's like this, I want to share that with people, but I feel like I can't. And that feels very lonely. Like I can't share the same things that other people can share because somebody is going to use that against me, or somebody's going to be like, oh, I see. Oh, they're working on this building. Oh, I know that contractor. I'm going to go. I didn't realize they were doing that job. I'm going to go talk to that guy. I bet I can get that job out from underneath him.
Interesting.
Like that kind of stuff. So it gets very lonely because you have to be so guarded with what you can share.
Does it feel like maybe the reason that you can't share the good things is because it's better not to share at all than to share anything besides the full story? Because it seems like if you were to share things now, you're sharing like the end of the story after there's already been that shitty part in the middle and the hard parts at the beginning that make it all worth it and all that stuff. Do you think that if you could have all of the elements of that story together, that you'd be more open to sharing some of the stuff that you're doing now?
Yeah, I think if you share it as one, like a book, you know, like, or something where you could share the whole thing, like this is where it was, this is all the stuff that I went through before. And then this is the payoff. That would be a great story to tell. Like, that's something I want to tell somebody like you. Like, yep, it's going to be lonely for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, it's going to suck. There's going to be times when people are going to say they're going to pay you and they're not going to pay you, and you're not going to know how you're going to pay other people. Like, all those things are going to happen, but look what's on the other side.
Yeah.
Like, it would be great to be able to put that story together in a digestible form, in a short enough piece that people could pay attention to it and see the whole thing.
What are some of the parts of your story that you wish that people could have just kind of as a baseline understanding? Let's say like from the first chapter of kind of like as you were starting the business and doing all those sorts of things.
That's a hard one for me to answer. One, I don't feel like everybody deserves it.
Okay.
Like, everybody doesn't deserve that lesson for the same thing I was just talking about, because there's some people that are going to be like, he's just whining about it.
Yeah.
Poor baby had to do that. Yeah.
Right.
Well, so like, it's not for everybody. But for the people that get it, and the people like you that are going to put in the work regardless, like, it's going to work. Like, getting that message to them that, like, it's going to work. You're doing the right thing. And there's going to be way more times early on that feel like it's not going to work, and you're going to be, not that it's not going to work, but where you're questioning yourself, is this going to work? Oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. Oh, I did get this contractor. I did get this interview. Holy shit. Am I ready for this interview? Just put your head down and get after it, because it's going to happen.
Yeah. What are some of the things that felt like they were foundational for you to be able to get to where you're at now?
I think so. The way I was just talking about this with a guy yesterday, the way my personality works, and it's not like an ego driven thing or whatever. It's just like, what's the next thing? Like, no matter what it is, like, I mean, take jujitsu. Okay. I'm going to try jujitsu. Okay. I need to get my blue belt. Oh, I got my blue belt. I'm not like, oh, I got my blue belt. Sweet. I'm like, okay, hey, Will, what do I got to do to get my purple belt? And it's not like it's not that driven. Oh, I got to live the grind, man, all that stuff. It's just like, what's the next thing? And how do I get, like, what do I do to get there? Oh, you got the promotion at work. Oh, now I'm a manager. Oh, really? Okay. Well, how do I become a supervisor?
Yeah.
Like, what's that? Like, I think that just always wondering what the next step is and working towards that is probably, I mean, that's literally the story of Tounsley Electric. Like,
Right.
Okay, I got to pay my bills. I'll go do some, basement remodels and stuff. And now we've got 25 guys and $10 million worth of work this year. And you know what I mean? Like, it's doing some of the biggest jobs in Billings and Montana. And it's literally been a process of, okay, I need to hire another guy. Okay, we need some more work.
Mm-hmm.
We need to do different kind of work. And that's been the process the entire time.
Tell me about some of the big steps that you feel like you've learned a lot from along the way. Maybe starting with what got you to leave your job working for somebody else as an electrical contractor, and then some of like the pivotal ones that have gotten you to that end piece now.
So when I left my previous employer, I had been in the field for almost 10 years as an electrician, and I was out of town a lot. And Owen was about 3 years old, and he was finally getting to the point. I was doing a big job over in Livingston, and I was, I'd leave Sunday night at 5 o'clock, and I'd come home Saturday night at, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, come in, do laundry, play with Owen for an hour, kiss the wife, and run out the door. And that was it. And he was finally getting to the point where, like, I'd come in and play with him and everything, and then I'd go to start packing my bag, and he'd start crying, and I was like, I can't, it's not worth it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's other work in town, whatever. So I went to my boss, which I really enjoyed working for that company. I enjoyed my coworkers. I enjoyed my boss. And I'd been offered a couple other jobs in the archery industry. So I went to him. I'm like, hey, here's the deal. I can't be I'll finish this job out of town. I'm not going to leave you high and dry. But when that's done, I want to move into the office. I want to start estimating. I want to be a manager, stuff like that. Oh, yep, we'll do it. We just need you to finish this job. So I finished that job, come back, and he hands me a set of blueprints. Okay. Like, I thought I was going to be in the office. Well, I just need you to do this one job. Okay. So I go out, and it was a gas station up in the Heights, and I got that done. And he hands me another set of blueprints. I'm like, thought I was moving in the office. He's like, I don't have anybody else. I'm like, well, I did what I said I was going to do. You're not doing what you said you were going to do, so I'm gone. So I left. And I think that the big lesson I learned from that was for years and years and years, I had seen, like I can do math. Like you're paying me this much, you're charging out this. Like in my head, I'm like, I can do this. And I know it's a lot of work and not everybody wants to do that. No, but not everybody can do that. But like, if I'm willing to put in the work, this is going to be more lucrative for me to do this way. And everybody tells you not to. Oh, no, don't do it. And not everybody should do it. But I'm like, I want to do this. And it reminds me of a story. That's too long of a story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So
we got time.
We got time. So this is a story that I literally like it's a lesson that I learned, and I think about it all the time. We were hunting in the breaks, and we hunted with this old guy, Bob. He passed away last year, finally, but we'd go hunting we'd camp with this old fella named Bob. And one day my hunting partner, he's out in the woods, and he comes back. He's like, man, I was up on this ridge and way out there in these sagebrush flats. He's like, I swear to God, I heard elk bugling out there. There's elk out there. I'm like, man, you think so? Like, that's just nothing but rolling hills and grass and sagebrush. He's like, I swear there was elk bugling out there. So we go over to Bob. Bob was like he was like our Yoda. Like literally, he'd been hunting there since the 60s, and this is in the early 2000s. So we go over to Bob. Bob, are there elk out there? He's, ain't any trees out there. God, I swear to God, I heard elk bugling out there. Yeah, I don't know. There ain't any trees out there. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. So we keep ruminating on this for days and days. And Jesse's finally like, I'm going to go figure it out. I know I heard elk out there. I heard him again this morning. I'm going out there. He goes out there, elk everywhere. There's like all these little draws and stuff with juniper trees in them. He's like, there's literally elk everywhere. Goes back the next morning, kills a big bull, comes back and he like got it all packed out, took it to town, comes back. He's like, there are elk everywhere out there and they're so easy to kill. Like, so we go to Bob and we're like, Bob, there's elk everywhere out there. He's like, oh yeah, I know. What? You said there weren't any elk out there. No, I said there weren't any trees out there. It's like, okay, okay, Yoda, like, you crafty bastard. So like, that's a thing that I've learned is like, listen to what the people are really saying. Like when they're saying, you shouldn't do this. Why shouldn't I do it? Well, because that's not the way we do it. You didn't give me an answer. Like, why shouldn't I do this? Give me a real reason why I shouldn't do this. Don't just tell me it's because that's not the way we do it. You didn't give me a reason. Like, listen to what people are actually saying. So
how do you apply that to you being willing to be like, yeah, there's a lot of people who are telling me that going out and doing my own thing might not be the idea, but I can sense that there's elk over there.
Because they weren't telling me, like, nobody had an answer for me. Like, why shouldn't I go out on my own? Well, just nobody does that. Okay, well, actually, some people did it. Like, there's electrical contractors out there. Like, I should be able to make more money doing that. You won't make any money. It's too much work, too much overhead. You won't make any money. Wait a minute, I see the house my boss has and all the toys he has. Like, he's making money. Like, so, like, listen to what they're saying. Like, are they actually giving you real reasons not to go do it? Or are they just regurgitating their own fears or the things that they've heard?
When you got into, when you finally stepped into it and went on that hunt, if you will, what kind of things were you faced with right out the gate as you took that step into doing your own thing?
Gosh, right away it was super. I mean, there's a period there where it took a little bit of time. A lot of people didn't take you. I think there was something like that year. It was 2008. 2007, 2008. So like right at the boom. And something like, somebody told me the number at one point, but one of the salesmen here in town at one of the wholesale houses told me there was something like 84 registered electrical contractors in Billings that year.
Mostly doing new construction?
Well, these were all new. A whole bunch of guys had gone out on their own. New construction was booming, so everybody was going out on their own, and I was one of them. And so nobody took you seriously. You'd go in, hey, I need a line of credit. Okay, whatever. Good luck. What do you have? Well, I don't have any. I got a truck. And I didn't have any credit. I didn't have good credit at the time. So like a lot of people don't take you seriously. And so that's another lesson I learned right away. So like, okay, you're not going to take me seriously. Well, the people that don't know me, that their first glimpse of me, they're going to take me seriously. Like when we'd send our billing out, I had a girl helping me with the books at the time. She started writing addresses on the envelope with handwriting. I'm like, no, run them through the computer, print it out, make it look like it came from a real company. This didn't come from my it did come from my basement, but they don't need to know that. Like, this came from a real company. I want the logo on it. I want the TEI logo on it. I want everything printed out. You're the office manager. What do you mean I'm in the office? I just help you do the books. Yeah, you're the office manager. You're the only one here. You're the office manager. You now have a title. When they call, hi, this is Jen, the office manager. How can I help you? Like, put that out there. People are going to believe. People are going to, you have to put that perception out of who you are. They're going to let you paint that picture however you want to. You should probably paint it the way you want to be seen.
For sure. So after you kind of got your footing and you, I don't know, I feel like there's that phase where it's like you get your logo done and your sign's on the door and it's like, we might actually be doing this shit. Right. I feel like that, I could see where having that box checked, I could see that being a launch point for another, like, okay, well, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
What did you see after that point as being like the next thing that you wanted to go attack?
I just wanted to finish that thing. I can remember the first big job we actually signed paperwork on. So I'd been doing a bunch of little, basement remodels and whatever. And a friend of mine calls up and she says, hey, I got a contractor here in town that's looking for a new electrician. Are you interested? I'm like, yep, I'm absolutely interested. So she said, okay. I met his guy. He gives me a set of prints. I go in and I bid the job and I go and give him a price and he calls me in the office, and it was Quentin Egger with EEC, who's also passed. I'm getting old. All these people keep dying. He's passed now, but I went into his office and I sat down and he's looking at me, and it was for such a small amount of, I think it was $24,000. Like, that is, we bid, $8-10 million jobs now. So 24,000 now seems so inconsequential, but at the time when he's like, did you get this on the print? Did you get this? Yep, I got that. You sure you can do it for this price? Yep, I can do it. Absolutely, I can do it. Okay. Job's yours. Signs paper, slides it to me.
In the office?
Yeah. I literally laid up that night thinking, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Like, just that number, $24,000. Like, I was making $20 an hour then. Like, $24,000 I didn't have. I probably had $1,000 in my savings account, Like, I'm just like, $24,000. Like, if I screw this up, I am so dead. Like, but then you get one done and he's like, okay, so we're doing a whole industrial park. We're going to fill this whole thing up with these buildings. You want to be our electrician? Yep. You're going to have to hire some more guys. I can't trust that you're going to be doing several buildings at a time. I can't trust that you can get these all done with yourself. Would you be willing to hire guys? Yep.
Wow. So just with that job, that kind of gave you like your two next things.
Yeah.
To be like, oh shit.
Sometimes the next things, fall in your lap and you don't have a choice. And so, yeah, like I hired Josh and then, okay, well, now I can't just show up in my truck. I need a work truck and I need this and I need that. And so, like, yeah, sometimes the next things kind of, you don't have a choice what those are, but sometimes you do.
I guess so. So talk to me a little bit about where you're at now and some of the, I don't know, I guess some of like the reality that is set in. Because one of my favorite things to listen to people talk about are when things that they asked for at the beginning finally come true and the perspective that comes from that. Yep. Where, if you would have asked you sitting in that office with Quentin,
right,
being like, hey man, one day you're going to have $10 million worth of work to do and blah, blah, blah. I'd imagine that guy would be like, oh man, I can't imagine what that'd be like and blah, blah, blah. Now that you're there, what perspective do you have that's different than what you had leading up to this point?
I would say appreciate the struggle of where you're at. So if you would ask, 35-year-old me, okay, or told 35-year-old me, you're going to be running this company. You can leave for a couple weeks at a time and nobody can tell you no, and everything will be fine. The company will run fine without you. Whatever you need to do, you can do from your phone or your computer. Like, you can get it done. You've done well enough that you can, you can go to Alaska hunting, you can go to BC hunting, you can do any hunting or fishing trip you really want to do. You can go do that. I'd have been like, oh man, sign me up. Like I will, you won't like, I'm like, my kids aren't even going to know my name. I'm going to be hunting and fishing all over the globe, you know? But you get there and you realize that one, there's so much satisfaction in the struggle. Like when you're at the previous level, you know what the struggle is every day. I got to go to work. I got to get up. I got to get the bills paid. I got to, you know, we're having a baby. I got to get a bigger house, whatever that is for whoever it is, you know, the truck's not running. It's going to die. I got to get enough money for a down payment. You know what that struggle is every day, and you know what you're working towards. And that's in itself is something to be appreciated. Not necessarily that lifestyle where you're living for the next paycheck, but knowing you have something to work against.
Yeah.
Because you get to a point where I'm pretty comfortable, and there's days where I'm like, you know, I don't do anything. Like I'll just sit around the house all day. And I'm like, if you'd have told me, you know, 15 years ago, if I'd had a day to sit around the house and it's the middle of deer season, I'd have been, you know, hunting or this or that, because that would have been the time I could go do it. And now it's almost like a little struggle is good.
Yeah.
Like it gives you something to work against. People need struggle.
Is there looking back now, is there a way that you could have appreciated it more while you were in it? Or do you think that there's a way where you're sometimes,
I don't know.
Sometimes I think it's like maybe you're only supposed to appreciate some of those things looking backwards.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe, yeah, and maybe that's what it is. Because there are times, like Owen right now, Owen works for me, my oldest boy. And he's in it now. Like he's in Big Sky. He's been there for 17 months. Nobody likes working in Big Sky. It's logistically, it's very complicated. The weather sucks. It's cold. It's snowy. It's muddy. Nobody wants to be there, so everybody has a shitty attitude. You're out of town all week, and he's in it right now, and he doesn't want to go back. And I know, and there's Sundays where he's looking at me like, Dad, you're the boss.
Yeah.
All you got to do is say the word, and I don't have to go back. I'm like, sorry, bud. That's exactly the reason you're the one that has to go. Like, you're going to be there till the end, because until the end of a particular part of one of the buildings, there's 3 buildings, and he's in charge of one of them, and you're going to be there till the end of it. And because you have to have known that struggle to be able to appreciate, where you make it to.
Yeah.
But then it's okay to still be like, once you get there and you are comfortable, be like, it was nice having a little bit of struggle,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Instead of feeling like it was handed to you.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. There's, you're the first person I've told this, which that's a common occurrence in our in our friendship.
Seems like that happens at least once every time we sit down.
For sure. There's an idea that I've had. I don't remember. I think I was listening to Chris Williamson talk about how some of the things that come with success and fame and recognition and all those different things is that you have what he calls champagne problems.
Yeah.
Sure. Where you've got the problem of well, damn, I had a full day today and I didn't do anything with it. A lot of people will look at you and be like, oh, poor yeah, baby. Poor right, problem,
yeah. No,
whatever.
as I was saying,
but but it's funny though, because I think that it's a real problem. It's just not one that people are familiar with. And one of the things that I find interesting is when you hear celebrities, so many of them go, I wish everyone could get famous so that people could realize that that's not the thing. Well, such a small percentage of people ever get there that they are never able to relate and be like, oh, those are problems. It is a problem that you can't go to the grocery store. It is a problem that you have to rent out an entire restaurant just if you want to go there, all these different things. And one of the things about this podcast is this is my professional sport. This is my contribution to the world. Everything that I want to build is around this. And watching all of the people who are at the top of this game, how many places can Rogan go where he's not going to get bothered?
Right.
I'm not sure where Chris Williamson's at with that stuff, but I guarantee he's running into that. Sure. And there's so much of that stuff. And one of the things that's been really heavy on my mind lately is writing myself a letter today, or from now, being okay, this is episode 1, and actually writing out which of the problems do I have today This episode will likely make $0. I was literally figuring out this fucking light 45 minutes before we got in here.
Sure.
Like, what are the things that are a problem now that I'm going to look back on and be like, man, but that was fun.
Yeah.
Or we learned a lot.
Right.
And which problems am I willing to sign up for? Because when I've got those champagne problems where, you know, it's like, oh, people are always bothering me, or somebody always wants a autograph, or you pick whatever your annoying thing is.
Right.
Knowing that that's something that you're asking for by setting out on that journey, I'm curious, A, I think it'd be cool to reflect on, but B, I'm wondering if it'll make some of those problems a little bit more relatable when they come around. Be like, yeah, no, I truly asked for this, and I knew that I was asking for this when I set out on it.
Right.
I'm curious because I would imagine that if you were to write yourself a letter when you were, I don't know, call it 30,
Mm-hmm.
and if you were to read that now, what do you think that it would have said, and would you have asked for the kinds of problems that you had now compared to the ones that you had when you were kind of in the weeds of things?
Yeah, I mean that's exact. Yeah, I would have written, like, my letter would have been, you know, you're working X amount of hours, you're working, you know, 15 hours a day, you're tired, you still don't have any money, you just want to go hunting, you just want some free time, you just want to be able to hang out with your kid, and those problems have all been solved now. Like, I've done all those things. Like, I'm not working 15 hours a day anymore. I'm not broke anymore. I don't, you know, I get to spend almost as much time as with my kids as humanly possible. Like, I can do anything I want to with them. I think the value in that would be being able to look back and really think about that. Like, I didn't do anything on Thursday. I just sat around the house. Okay. But remember this Thursday when you had a cold and it was 15 below out and you walked outside and the truck had a flat tire and you had to be at that building to wire it because, you know, this other subcontractor was going to be there and you had to get your part done. Okay. Wasting a Thursday isn't that big of a deal.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that. And that's the things that I would put in that letter, like the things that are draining you, like what is really draining you right now.
Mm.
So you look back and appreciate that that's not there anymore.
Do you think that people have a tendency to maybe glorify some of the early days and forget about how hard they actually were when they look back and smile on it? Like, yeah, but wasn't it awesome? And
yeah, it's type 2 fun.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know type 2 fun, type 1 fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's type 2 fun. It's like, it sucked when you were in it, but now when you're standing around and there's a bunch of apprentices around, you're like, oh shit, that's one time, you know, and you get to tell that story. And, oh man, that was so much fun. Then we went out on a bunch of beers. At the time, it wasn't fun. At the time, it was terrible. But now it's fun to tell those stories, you know?
Yeah. So, do you think that there's anything about those early days that are fun that gets people to start new things after they've quote unquote made it?
I think you see how easy it is. You know, maybe for some people that's what it is. I know the reason that I've started so many side projects since then is because I've seen how easy it can be.
Mm.
Like, if you just keep it really, really simple, it's not that hard. Get a product that people are willing to pay for that you can sell for more than it costs you. Your business is like, it's literally that simple.
Incoming consulting agency
right,
coming
exactly.
from Jason Tounsley.
Life coach, right? Like, that's literally it. So I think, like, there's been 4 or 5 different side projects I've done, and all of them have been relatively successful and could have been more successful, but they get to a point and I'm like, you know, if I was putting this much effort into my original business, I'd be making way more money. But it's not that hard. And once you see it, and it's so easy. And most of mine have been helping other people, you know, hey, this guy wants to start that. Let's start it. Let's do it. Let's go. Like, mm-hmm. Jimmy, like you want to build a gym? Let's do it. You know, it's not that hard. Let's do it. Well, I don't know. It costs this much money. And it's not that hard. Let's just go do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. 100%, man. It's,
let's start a podcast. It's not that hard.
Yeah. No shit. I know. I know, man. It's, one of the things that I get excited about thinking about what the end of my story might look like, or what some of those later chapters might look like, is being able to have time to dedicate, like real time to dedicate to pursuits that don't have to have any money attached to them. And some of the things that I love about talking with you is the time that you spend getting into things like stoicism and, you know, going into new ventures, whether it's a gym or if it's writing or if it's cigars or like whatever the thing is. That's one of the things that's the most exciting to me, because I keep on coming back when I get really in the weeds of things. I've got this vision of being able to sit at a coffee shop in Europe by myself at one of those little 2 top tables and paper watch and just sit there and write. I don't know what the hell I'm writing, you know, whatever I'm feeling that day or whatever. But being able to take the time to have pursuits, like if you want to write a book or if you want to, you know, go all in on a podcast, if you want to do all that stuff. And I'm curious which of those kinds of pursuits have been the most exciting to you, whether it's the reading that you've done or getting into cigars recently. Tell me about some of the interesting things that you've done now that you do have some more of that time in your schedule.
For a while there, it was jiu-jitsu. You know, when I first started jiu-jitsu 8 years ago-ish, like I was literally in there every day for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. Like, I mean, I got my blue belt in about a year, and every Thursday me and Will had a private at 11 o'clock, and then I'd roll for 2 more hours. And, you know, all week long I'd work on whatever the private was. And then the next week I'd walk in and sit down. Okay, I did everything you said, and this is where I'm, you know, coming up against the wall. Okay, try this, this, and this, and this. Okay, that's what I'll do. And for the next week, that's what I do. And I just poured myself into that. Recently, striking, boxing, I've been been doing more and more of that. That's, you know, super fun. Great way to stay in shape. I'm having a hard time going to the gym anymore.
Interesting.
Like, I've been in some sort of, you know, done some sort of fitness my entire adult life, whether it was just like bro stuff in the gym back in the day. I owned a CrossFit gym for a while, and I'd been a member of that CrossFit gym for 7 years before that. Weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, I was way into that for a while and was a coach for that. And then, you know, I own a functional fitness type gym in Bozeman right now. And like, but just going in and lifting weights that's getting harder and harder to do. Like, I don't know, for some reason that's getting harder and harder to do. But like the striking and the jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, like where I'm trying not to get my ass beat rather than like, oh man, I got 5 more burpees to do. You know, like it's accomplishing the same thing. It's easier for me. Well, it's not easier, but, and it's a transferable life skill too, you know? So like that, I'm getting way into, cigars recently. That's a big one. You were part of that actually.
Yeah. I was a day late.
Two. Yeah. You were day 2. So at ADCC's last summer, me and Lane were walking back from dinner, and honestly, I didn't even want a cigar. I wanted a quiet place to sit down. Like that whole,
because Vegas isn't really your spot.
Vegas
right?
is that's hell to me. Like so many people, so loud, things always moving and flashing. It's just like there's too much going on for my brain. And I literally were walking back, and he's like, "You want to get a drink?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I look over, and there's like a cigar lounge off to the side, and it's like, you know, very dark and big leathery chairs, and there's no machines in there, no flashing lights. I'm like, we should go in there. He's like, oh, you want to get a cigar? I'm like, I just want a whiskey, but I'll smoke a cigar. Like, I don't care, whatever
gets me onto that big couch with nothing bothering on me.
Exactly, right. I want to sit in that big floofy chair right there. And so we go in there, and I'd never had a cigar before. Well, I mean, like, the only cigars I'd ever had were like, you know, bachelor party.
Yeah.
Somebody's got a $5 cigar. You bite the end of it and, you know, light it, and then you get tobacco in your mouth and everything. It's not a fun experience. He's like, let's go get cigars. I'm like, all right. So we go get a couple cigars, and we sit down, and literally within, 3 or 4 puffs on the cigar, I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. Like, this was it the ambiance? Was it the, like, what was it, the whole thing just at once? Like, what were the things where it's like, this is the one? Yes. It was the mood of the place. It was the ambiance. It's the big leather couches and mahogany wood tables, and like all that is very calming and relaxing. Like that very warm, moody lighting. It's just very calming and relaxing. And then that cigar. And I've thought about this so much because people always ask me, like, what do you like about it so much? And it's such a hard thing to put your finger on it, but I think it, like, so if you get a good quality handmade cigar, they're like 10 to 20 bucks a piece, you know, the average, like the type that I smoke. And you're going to be sitting there for an hour to hour and a half smoking that cigar. And if I were to just go and sit down in a room and I'm going to sit here for an hour and a half and just, you know, parse through my thoughts and get things in order, I couldn't make it 15 minutes. Like, I'd be like, you know what? I could be shoveling snow. I could be cleaning my truck. I could be, you know, getting fishing gear ready. There's a million things I could be doing right now. My brain won't let me sit down for that long. But for some reason, when you light that cigar, it gives you a reason to sit there. You're doing something, but it's in a way that your brain can still be working on. It's very similar for me anyway to like a long road trip all by yourself. Mm. Like if I got to drive to the Bozeman to have a meeting in the gym, I'll drive 2.5 hours there, 2.5 hours back. I don't listen to music. I don't listen to podcasts. I just drive in the silence. And same thing, it gives me something to do that I'm doing something, but then I can sit there and go through all those open tabs in my brain one at a time and be like, okay, what about this thing? Okay, it's not really that big a deal. Close that one. What about this one? Okay, this is how I should handle this. Da, da, da. And it's the same thing. And so I spend, you know, I think every day since that day, except about 2 or 3, I've sat down and had a cigar, and I love sitting out on my patio in the back when it's, you know, nice out, not when it's 27 below out, but, you know, and I sit back there in the sunshine in my chair and I watch the golfers go by and the squirrels playing in the trees. And I just sit out there, and it gives me enough to do where I don't feel like I need to go do something else. And it almost puts me into like this meditative state where I can logically go through each of these tabs in my brain of things I'm working on and kind of connect the dots and close the circles.
Is it it's almost like it's like meditation disguised as as smoking.
You know, I journal, I do all that. I've tried meditating. I can't do it. Like, I can't sit there. There's no way I can let my brain just go blank. It won't. I'll be like, oh yeah, my brain is going blank. Like, oh yeah, that's like that. You know, like, so it is. It's like forced meditation. That's what it is. It's like this thing that gives me enough to do to satisfy the part of my brain that says you should be getting something accomplished, so that I can sit there and actually sort through my thoughts.
Yeah, I really appreciate cigars too. What got me to appreciate them was 75 Hard, actually, which sounds kind of hilarious. Where it's like a fitness challenge got me into smoking
Not
cigars.
On my bingo card.
Yeah, no shit. But what's funny about 75 Hard, the way that I did it the first time, was you know, you're not drinking alcohol. You've got a specific diet to stick to and all that stuff. But nowhere in there does it say you don't have any vices.
Sure.
And so the first time that I was doing 75 Hard, I was doing it with Kobe and Alicia, and we had all agreed on like similar diets and all the same stuff. But what was funny about it was, like, since we weren't drinking at the time, it was like, well, when we hang out, what are we gonna do? So we were like hanging out at the house, and we were watching UFC fights and doing all that kind of stuff. But we would start smoking cigars. Right. And it was funny because my alcohol consumption went to 0. But smoking cigars, and we'd get these little like shorty joints because our freaking tolerance was 0. The levels of everything else went up, like skyrocketed. Sure. But cigars were awesome because it was like, we can smoke these, still be good to go tomorrow. Granted, I'm not a huge fan of having to brush your teeth 4 fucking times, but and it was nice because, like you said, it's like if you and I were just to sit at this table right now, not podcasting, not smoking cigars or whatever, and just be like,
that'd be the weirdest
so tell me
thing.
about it. Yeah, it's like, it's cool because it's like just this little $10 thing gives you this excuse to sit and have conversations with people, or like do whatever that is. And I think it's the same kind of ethos that's behind drinking too. Sure. It's just you end up sometimes being a dumbass when you're drinking. Right. Yeah. So I'm curious about, like, outside of just the meditative spot for you, what other things has like your new cigar passion kind of brought into your life?
Well, brought a new room into my life, like full on, like remodeled my house so I could smoke cigars inside. We had a little nook off to the side of well, you've been there, but the listeners haven't. So, there was a nook off to the side of the downstairs rec room. And so I ended up framing in a wall and putting in French doors and a ventilation system and put in, painted the walls a dark gray, and, put all the mahogany trim and all the stuff, and, made it a room where I can actually, the first night I get it all done and sealed up, and I put the exhaust system in, and it's, concrete floor at the time. And Kelly had gone, because this is like, she's been supportive of this, but more so than I thought. She's like, I like the way they smell and everything. I don't mind that you do it. She's been super, she's seen my stress levels go down like a lot. And so she's like super supportive. She's like, but I don't want my house to smell like cigars, which
checks out.
Yeah. Okay. So she left and went to, I don't know where she went. And I went down in the room and smoked a cigar, and she came home, and I walk up and I'm like, do you smell cigars in here? She's like, no, I don't smell anything. I'm like, you don't smell anything? She's like, no. I'm like, yes. Like, it worked. And she's like, what worked? I'm like, I had a cigar in the cigar room, And so we built the whole cigar room. I just actually finished. I got one piece of trim to put up when I get home, and then it's completely finished. Then we'll have to break her in.
How long is that piece of trim going to take?
So that's literally the joke. My mom made this joke. My kid made this joke. I have so many projects that are 98% finished that literally, and I'm doing it because I'm going to prove it to myself that I can't. I told my mom, I'm like, I have one piece to get done. She called me right before I came here. She's like, what have you been doing? I'm like, I got the cigar room finished. She's like, oh, like totally finished, or like your dad would finish it? I'm like, well, kind of like dad would finish it, because I got one piece of trim left. Like, it's 99.9% done, but I'm gonna do that tonight. She's like, that's what your dad would say. I'm like, okay,
watch me.
Thanks, Mom. So like, I'm gonna prove to the world that I can actually finish a project. I'm gonna get that done tonight.
Heck
so,
yeah. I got to hear, what was it, probably 2 months ago now, when we stayed up till 1 a.m. around the campfire, back when you could still light a fire, because it's so freaking cold lately. What's going to be your break-in ritual for the new spot?
There's a couch and 2 chairs. So there's 4 spaces to sit. And I think that's probably about as much as my exhaust system will keep up with. So I've been curating a list of who's going to be at the initial break-in, and I think it's probably going to be you and Lane and Owen. I love having a cigar with Owen. That's so much fun. So when he was little, he'd come to me, like, this is so crazy, the difference between my 2 boys. I can't get Cooper to talk to me about anything. You talk to hey, are there any girls at school you like? Shut up, Dad. Won't say, like, he won't talk to me about anything. Owen, like, I gave him the birds and the bees speech when he was 6, because he was asking, like, what's this commercial about, Dad? What does that mean? And so finally I was like, all right, I got to give him the whole, he sat there and took it like a champ, like, dang. Okay, and very interested. We can talk about anything. We'd have man-to-mans. He'd always say, Dad, can we have a man-to-man?
Really?
Yeah, he'd come
as a little guy. That must have been the cutest shit of all time.
Oh my God, yeah. I was like, I'm killing it. This is the best thing ever. He'd come to me, Dad, can we have a man-to-man? We haven't had a man-to-man lately. And I'd be like, yep, let's do it. And so we'd go sit on the patio or go sit in the basement or whatever.
I'd give that little 6-year-old a whiskey, be like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it.
He probably had his first beer when he was about 8. Yep, we're having a man-to-man. Suck that down. But now it's like, he'll come home and he'll be home for the weekend, and he's got to go see his girlfriend. He's got to go see his mom. He's got to go, he wants to come and see me. He's got all these things to do, and he gets so frazzled. And even when he's there, he's not really present. And I'll be like, hey, you want to go out on the patio and have a cigar? Yeah, I'll have a cigar. And we go out and sit down, and it's like now he's here. Now he's present. He's here, and we have those, man-to-mans, and we sit there and we talk about stuff. He tells me where he's at with his girlfriend and his plans for this and that. And it's such a cool deal just to be able to sit down and bring him back to being present and have that opportunity.
Man, that's got to be such a cool feeling.
It is.
Yeah. We got a little bit off of the 4 people and the christening ritual.
Yeah, so
what else we
people,
got?
So it'll probably be myself. Owen will be there. I'd like to have you come. I'm formally inviting you.
Heyo.
And then Lane. Because he kind of started this whole thing, and that's it. It seems like every time we have a cigar night, it's some variation of me, you, Lane, and then other people.
Right.
So yeah. I feel like you and me, Lane, Owen will have a.
Okay.
Well, I've got some cigars picked out. The first round, I'm sure we'll have more.
Yeah.
And a few bourbons and
okay.
All good. So yeah.
Do you have things that are particularly sentimental to you, whether it's like specific, bourbon, scotches, whatever, cigars, anything like that that you enjoy bringing out for celebrations? Or do you have, is it a pretty just like, yeah, we'll do something?
I like, there's the cigar that I picked for a reason. That'll be the first one that we have in there together, all of us. And it's because, so I went down to Ybor City in Florida. So I own a home down in Florida, and we always fly into Tampa, and we usually spend a day in Tampa, either on the front end of the trip or the back end of the trip. And so Tampa is like the hub of cigar culture in the United States. And Ybor City is actually, at one point, was the cigar making capital of the world. And it's still there. It's a Cuban neighborhood. And so I went down there. Last time I was down there during, I don't remember which hurricane it was, but the last hurricane that came ripping through my house. Everybody else went home. My flight left 2 days later, so I went down there by myself one day. And I go down to Ybor City, and so there's like a stretch of the street. I can't remember. It's 7th Avenue or something, I think, and it's about 3/4 of a mile long, and there's a whole bunch of cigar stores there and lounges there, and they make the cigars. There's little old Cubans making cigars in the windows and everything, and so I went down there and I went into one of it's King Corona Cigar Club. It's like one of the oldest cigar clubs in the United States, and I go in there and I go into the humidor and I talk to the guy. And I ask him about a particular brand of cigar, and he's like, well, which one do you like, this, that? And we talk about it for a while. He's like, here's the cigar for you. And he pulled out, it's called a Arturo Fuente Opus X Rare Pink. He's like, this is your cigar. This is the one you want. I'm like, okay. So I get one. And it's not a super expensive cigar. I mean, like, it's like $35, but it's not. I mean, there's cigars that are thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. It's like $35. I'm like, all right. So I go out. And so, like, Cubans drink espresso and smoke cigars. And I'm in the Cuban neighborhood, and it's Sunday morning. So I go out and I order a espresso, and I sit down at my little table, and I'm kind of like up on this little elevated area, and down below it's a whole bunch of little old Cuban dudes, like 60 to 80 years old, and they're watching they're watching soccer. And they're arguing and yelling at each other. They're very heated, passionate people, and they're like yelling at each other and stuff. And they're smoking cigars and drinking their espresso and watching soccer. And I'm just sitting up there on my little spot watching them. And I can see the people in the window, on the street walking back and forth. And it was just like the most, and the cigar was perfect. I've had another one since then. It's literally my favorite cigar I've ever had. But that experience was just cool. It's like, I'm drinking my espresso, I'm having my cigar. I'm like this is as much of this culture as you can get. It was just really cool. So, but generally speaking, I would say no. I don't like have sentimental value wrapped up in certain things like that. Okay. But I enjoy sharing things like that with people. Like I love cooking dinner for people. Like I love spending 20 hours making the perfect brisket and then having everybody come on over and having dinner and not just like food, but something that takes like some time. Like I make some really good ribs. I love having a bunch of people over for ribs and having a barbecue on the back porch. And I just I like sharing that. Like it's something that takes time, and it's something that takes several attempts to get good at. And so like you've got a bunch of time invested, and then sharing that with other people to bring them over and bring them around. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I didn't learn how to cook until, I still don't know how to cook, actually. Let's clarify that. I've learned to get semi-proficient at a couple different things. Right. And that's one of the things that I never really understood was like cooking always seemed like such a chore to me. And yeah, I absolutely love it because it's one of the things that you can give somebody that it's pretty much universally appreciated. Yeah. But also it's, there is something sentimental about it that was like, it's not how much did you spend on the eggs and the French toast and all this stuff that you gave him. It's just like some kind of act of love that has nothing to do with anything else other than just like, I put time into this and effort, and like we get to share it together.
Yeah, now. It almost doesn't even matter how good it turns out when it's not just like dinner time's at 5:00 and I have to feed these people like my kids or something. When it's like I have to keep them alive by law, but it's when just somebody, Kelly hasn't cooked. I don't want to say she's not a good cook, but because she is a good cook, but she hasn't cooked a lot. So like she keeps trying all these new recipes, and they all have turned out really well, but it doesn't even really matter. Just the fact that you put that effort in to go and pick something that you think I'll like and then go get not just get the garlic paste in a tube or something. You went and got garlic and you stood there and you chopped it up, and regardless of how it turned out, you put your best effort forward to do something for me. Like that's I don't know. It just feels special.
Yeah. There's something about that, man. Speaking of sentimental stuff, you've made me wait 3 months
right.
to tell me what it is behind this knife. And I asked you about it a little while ago, and you're like, we're still podcasting, right?
Right.
Yes.
That was the only way I knew I was going to get to redo the podcast.
Yeah. You had to hold it over my head.
I'm not telling you that story unless we're re-recording.
So for everyone watching, this is what we're talking about. This was a Christmas gift from Mr. Tounsley this year. And on the knife, well, actually, I'll let you go for it. And I saw that yours says the same thing the other day, too.
Yeah, it does. So at one point, you had given me a thank you card or something for a T-shirt with a card on it when you were talking about rebranding Storyline and stuff. And in that, you said, thank me for my mentorship. And you've mentioned me or referred to me as a mentor several times, which is like, that's really cool. Like, I don't take that lightly. So I wanted to get you something for Christmas. Kelly's like, Drew's getting you something for Christmas. Like, I had already bought this and I didn't know what I wanted to get this for you and do this, but like, it seems like such a, I don't know, like I've never bought a gift for a dude before.
Funny.
Yeah. So I'm like, it was just such a weird deal. Yeah. So I had bought this and it was sitting in my dresser, and she's like, Drew got you a Christmas gift, just so you know. I'm like, oh yeah, I got him a better Christmas gift.
You weren't wrong. Yeah, you weren't wrong.
Right? No, it's not better. It's the thought that counts. So growing up, I always had a weird appreciation for pocket knives. Like I would go into a hardware store and, the old, case knife case and there'd be all these knives in there, and I'd go and I'd stare at them and I'd be like, oh, that one would be really good for cutting rope. And, oh, that one would be really good for, skinning a deer. Like I really appreciated pocket knives and knives in general, I guess. And especially if they had a very specific use, like they were a tool built for something. And I just always, I didn't have to own them. I didn't buy them. I went in there and I just had a lot of appreciation for them. And I just thought I was a weird little kid. But about, 2-3 years ago, I read an excerpt from an article that was first printed in a magazine called The Appalachian. And it talks about the kind of man that carries a pocket knife. And I'm paraphrasing here, excuse me. I don't know word for word, but basically it says, a man that carries a pocket knife is the kind of guy that can fix things. He's prepared. He has tools and he knows how to use them. He's the guy you look to when there's trouble and you need help. Like that's the guy that carries a pocket knife. And it literally dawned on me at that time that the reason I had this appreciation for pocket knives, or knives, I guess, was all the men that I looked up to in my life all carried a pocket knife.
Interesting.
My dad, my uncles, the guys that my dad hunted and fished with, they all carried pocket knives. And literally I had this epiphany in that moment, oh, that's why, the two equate for me, and that's why I appreciate them so much. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I was when you're talking about me being a mentor to you, I'm like, well, what a cool gift. Just I don't know. There's stuff there, but
yeah.
Just this is, this is what you should look to be, I guess. And then the second part is the engraving on it.
Yeah.
So it says, this one? I know this one. So it's I don't know. That's my favorite quote ever. So I'm a quote guy too. You're a quote guy. I'm a quote guy. I got a million quotes, and most of the quotes that I know remind me of lessons I learned. A quote is just a reminder of a lesson I learned. You learn a lesson, somebody tells you that quote, and you're like, oh yeah, no, that is a real thing. And then that helps you remember that lesson. But this particular quote is a filter that I run things through. It's literally a filter that I run things through that help me decide how to live my life. And so the quote is, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And it was originally said by a guy named Edmund Burke. And you can go on the internet and look it up, and there's a whole bunch of arguing about whether he ever actually said it or not. But basically, he said several versions of this quote in different speeches. And it's pretty much been boiled down to this. But it's I use that as a filter a lot. So like, and I think it goes well with the knife thing, because like all the good men that I knew that carried knives, that's why I had that appreciation for the knives. And this is like a filter that I run things through to make sure that I'm living as a good man. So a really good example of this, there's a kid at the gym that's been coming for a while, and he doesn't have a lot going on. He's not troubled, but he doesn't have a lot of good male role models. He doesn't have a lot of direction. He's just going out on his own. He's a young man that's just going out on his own, moving away from his family and stuff. Doesn't have a lot of direction. He's got some anger. He's got like, this kid could end up in a bad place. Like, but so the other day, our other friend Drew calls me up. He's like, or he texts me. He says, "What are you doing today?" So I got a million things to do. I thought he wanted to go train or go get lunch or something. Like, I got a million things going on today. What's good? What's up? He's like, "So I want to talk to you about this kid." He's like, I want to help him out, and this is what I want to do. I'm doing it regardless, but I'd appreciate it if you could help me help him. And I'm literally like, I'm not helping fighters anymore. I'll support the gym till the end of the day. I'll sponsor the gym, and Will can use that to help the fighters in whatever way he wants, but I'm not sponsoring individual fighters anymore. It never turns, like, I never walk away from that feeling good.
It's on the record now. Folks.
It is. I'm not, so don't ask me anymore. Go talk to Will. And I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore. He's like, well, here's the deal. He's like, this is a kid. This is why I feel this way. This is why I think we should help. And I'm like, I run that through this filter. Like, all that's necessary for the triumph of evil, all that's necessary for this kid to end up being a piece of shit, is for me to not do anything. Like, for a good man, which I want to be, to not do anything. Okay, I can help. I should probably help.
Wow. Yeah, that's heavy, man. It's when you talk about men that you respect carrying a knife, the first one that comes to mind, and the only one that made an impact on me was my grandpa growing up.
Yeah.
And God, he's the coolest motherfucker that ever lived, man.
Yeah, partially because he carried a knife. So.
Partially because he carried a knife. But he's a farm boy from Kansas, had over a dozen siblings. I think he was one of 13. Wow. And the whole, like, the typical story, right? Everybody's helping out on the farm. The whole thing. And till the day he died, he's wearing pearl snap shirts. He's got a Stetson, big old handlebar mustache. Drove classic cars, fixed them up himself. Just like, objectively one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. And one of my favorite memories of him, and it happened all the time, was he would bring his knife out and he would sit. He'd sit on the corner of the table, and he had this way of peeling apples where you could damn near see through them.
Sure.
And he would sit there, and it reminds me of what you talk about with cigars, where he'd sit on the edge and he'd have something to keep his hands occupied, and he'd sit there and just talk to us. Yeah. And he'd like just these razor thin apple slices, and he'd hand us one while we were talking. We didn't even think of it, but it was just like, it was like watching a master at work, and it was just the most simple thing of all time. Right. But he was the only one that I remember like ever carrying a knife and having a real like reason for it, I guess. Yep. And every time he got an apple in his knife out, I was like, "Ooh, I'm going to be able to hang out with Grandpa, and I'm going to be able to somehow he's going to get 500 apple slices out of this thing. Right. We're going to be here for a while." Right. But one of the coolest things about this was the quote on here I think is awesome, and it was I've been trying to do a lot of thinking of like, why won't Jason tell me what this means? What does it mean to him? So it's really cool to be able, and I'm glad that you saved it until now to put all those pieces together. But it was really cool for me. My grandpa's a mentor that was there, but I never utilized.
Sure.
And my little brother did, and I'm so proud of him for that. And my first tattoo was my grandpa's birthday on my Achilles. Is like
Cool.
kind of that's my Achilles heel. That I would have been a better man if I would have spent more time around him and done a lot of those things. And it's always a good reminder that like not to take advantage or like to take for granted the people who are in your life. Like all that, I was a stupid kid, and
right.
it was like, I wanted to go out shooting with my friends, or I wanted to go ride bikes with my buddies, and
Right.
all of these different things that I would give up in a freaking heartbeat to like go and have another apple with my grandpa. And after you gave me this knife, it was like one of the first things that I did was able to like sit down, cut up an apple, and just like think about my grandpa, because this is also the first knife that I ever started carrying. And putting together this fucking studio, it's been super helpful because the amount of zip tie, this will cut through a zip tie, it'll cut through this weird little thing that was on the box today. But I really appreciate it, man. And it's, even if there was no cool quote on it or anything like that, it's, I feel grateful to have you as a mentor and a friend and all the things. And it'll also give me, an excuse when I'm like, I don't really have room in my pockets today. I'm like, nah, I'm carrying it. I want to be one of those guys Jason's talking about.
Do it for your grandpa.
Absolutely, man. Well, sweet. There's obviously, I think there's so much more on the table, so we'll have to do this again at some point. We'll do it in your man cave where we can get some cigars lit up.
I'll get that exhaust figured out, and we'll do the next one in the cigar room.
One of the things that I've been thinking about with this show is, you've been on the Owner's Journal. We've got a couple boilerplate questions that we asked at the end and all those kinds of things. I'm obsessed with story, and the reason that I even got interested in podcasts in the first place is because you and I, over cigars and jiu-jitsu and drinks and like all the different things, we've gotten a chance to have so many conversations. And there's a lot of times where I walk away feeling so grateful, but also maybe sometimes even guilty, where I'm like, why do I get to have that conversation? And how many other people could have benefited from that same thing? What would they have done with it? And I love that this is a platform that can like get people to be able to have those same conversations and same benefits. So one of the questions that's been really heavy for me that I want to know from people is, given all of the life that you've lived so far, what would you describe as being your best story? If you have the entire finished copy of your book, let's say that you live a full life, you've got, a beautiful life and everything, but what does that finished story look like? And then coming back, how do you describe the chapter you're in right now?
How does the story finish?
Yeah. Like, what are the things between now and the end of the story that you want to make sure are chapters and things that are written in there?
And this came from a conversation with Summer literally yesterday or the day before. One of the things, having just gotten engaged and looking forward to spending the rest of my life with somebody, the goal now is building a life that we're happy. Not that we're not happy now, but like, so there's all these different things that we like to do. We like to go to Florida. We like to travel. We like, hanging out with the boys. The boys, I'll hang out with them anytime. There's all these things that are important to us, fitness and whatever it is. But then there's a whole bunch of things that get attached to that, or obligations you think you have because of somebody else's feelings or some, the goal now, and I hope the way the story ends, is to be able to parse away those things that don't matter. Not do things because that's what somebody else expects from you or expects you to do, and boil it down to living a life that is fulfilling for both of us, and we get all the time with all the people we need and all the people we love, and we get to do it in the places we want to do it, and there's none of the extra bullshit attached.
Just simplicity.
Yeah.
Oh,
but I still want to launch a lot of stuff. Like, I still need like 6 boats.
Yeah, for sure.
That's not bullshit, just to be clear. So,
that's part of the simplicity.
Right, exactly.
What would you, how would you describe the chapter you're in now, and what would you name the chapter if you had to give it a chapter title?
Final act. Like literally, like I kind of feel like you could break my life down into like three pieces right now. Like, you know, growing up till you become a young man, and then, you know, like maybe 20, 25, somewhere in there. And then from 25 to 50, building a family, raising boys, building a business. And now, my boys are, you know, Owen is out on his own. Cooper's 13. And I mean, at this point, it's just making sure he doesn't go to prison, you know,
Yeah.
like, but like he knows right from, like, he's a good kid. He's not going to go to prison, but, like that's winding down, or the demands of that is winding down. My business winding down. At some point I'll walk away from that. So yeah, I think now it's like you grew up, you did all the work. Now it's time to enjoy it and just coast to the finish line. Well, not coast, but I don't want to coast, but like, yeah, just enjoy it and live life and enjoy what you've built and what you work for.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to get there, man.
Right. You will.
Yeah. All right. Last thing. Is there any, if you had a billboard and you got to put one thing on it, everybody in the world would see it. You can put a quote, you can put a picture, you can put a combination of anything. But in parting, what would you put on that billboard?
In some way, I would ask everyone to be more open to understanding other people's perspectives. Like, I just feel like everybody's so like dialed in and on this team or that team, whether it's politics or whatever. Like, everybody's just like, this is my team. I'm digging my feet. I'm not going to listen. I've already got my argument made up for whatever you say. Shut the fuck up and listen sometimes. Like, understand that's why they feel that way. Like, I couldn't understand gun control. Like, that when I was younger, that idea made zero sense to me till I spent a week in LA, and I'm like, yeah, these people should not have guns. Like, I understand a different perspective now. Like, yeah, like, just stop and listen to what the other person's saying, and you don't have to agree with them. Try and understand their perspective and learn something from it, and go about your day.
I love it. All right, everybody, spend more time listening. Shut the fuck up and listen. All right, this was a ton of fun, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll wait for the next one in the Cigar Lounge.
Yeah, I like
All
it.
right, bye, everybody.